Hey readers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire Books, and I'm finally here with my reading roundup for September. It has been a wild month so far. Let's just say that October is crazy for high school teachers, but I did read a bunch last month. We're going to go over it, and I'm well on the way to another good reading month right now. Let's just say I prioritize reading over filming. But better late than never, let's get my September recap recorded. The first book I read in September was Second Place by Rachel Cusk, and I've heard her name a lot, but I'd never read any of her work. It was interesting. Second Place is a very likely unreliable first-person narrative about a woman who has this little artist retreat on her property, and she invites an artist that she is very obsessed with to come and stay with her for a while, and it gets just really weird. There's some interesting things happening in the narrative that I did really appreciate. At the same time, I'm not really sure that I enjoyed this book on a base level, and I have really mixed feelings about it. Rachel Cusk is a very buzzy author, and I'll probably try something more from her at some point, but for me, the jury is definitely still out on her work. That said, this was a quick read. It was interesting. It was different. So if you're looking for that, this might be a good path to go down. So on that note, the second book I read this past month was Morning Glory Milking Farm by C.M. Nascosta. So I read this because it was all over Book Talk, and it is definitely an 18 plus read, so take the warning now. Just skip ahead a little bit until the book cover is off the screen if you don't want to hear about it. But Morning Glory Milking Farm is basically a fantasy world romance where humans and different mythical creatures are coexisting in very modern cities. They're living very modern lives. And it turns out that a very key ingredient in Viagra is minotaur semen. So in order to make erectile pills for humans, there are milking farms that spring up to collect this material for medication through milking. And so basically this is a story of a woman who really needs money. She takes a job at a milking farm, and for the most part it's just a job that she turns out to more or less enjoy. But she also starts to develop serious feelings for one of the clients, so we end up with a fun monster romance. And one thing I really liked about this was that even though what she was doing was very sexual day to day at her job, she was treated really respectfully. The job came off as actually a very professional environment, and the way that her love interest handles that in the book is also very respectful. So he's somebody who, meets her in a very intimate circumstance, but the way that their relationship progresses is really above board and actually very much a model of a good budding romance. So I really got a kick out of it. If you are interested in something that's smutty but also kind of oddly wholesome, then Morning Glory Milking Farm might be a fun Kindle Unlimited read for you. Next, I read The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. So this is nonfiction, and it's an attempt to mash up two different historical figures who were existing and doing their own thing in the same period. So one of those people is Daniel Burnham, who is one of the architects responsible for the World's Fair. The other is H.H. Holmes, who was a serial killer and a complete creep who built a disturbing building that was a World's Fair hotel very near to the World's Fair. So it's a book that juxtaposes these two people who were alive at the same point in time and who were partially defined by the same big event. One thing that's interesting about it, though, is that it really does kind of feel like two books in one. The attempt to really connect the two narratives I didn't think was super successful, but both were quite interesting. So if you want some entertaining nonfiction, I feel like this is just a totally decent, entertaining read. Next, I read The Diving Bell and the Butterfly by Mohammed Achaari. And so I picked this book up because it had an amazing hook. Basically, a man's son has gone off to college, or at least that's where they think their son is, but he gets a letter saying that his son is now a martyr in Afghanistan. So basically, his son became an extremist and was killed in fighting in Afghanistan. And it's his attempt to cope with that is the meat of the book. So the story takes place in Morocco, and there are several different characters who are having their own struggles with the social structures in Morocco, with political issues there, and these things come out both in the main character's struggle with his son's death and in these sort of fights about architecture and development in various cities in Morocco. And this book was the co-winner of a major Arabic literary prize. So it definitely received a lot of critical acclaim. That said, There are moments where I think it's really beautiful and where there's really something cool going on. I also thought that maybe the book tried to do too much and perhaps lost some of its brilliance for that. That said, it is a really interesting read, especially if you want insight into another culture. I really enjoy world literature and translation, specifically work translated from Arabic. So I found this interesting, but it wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. But it wasn't as much of a gut punch as I was hoping it would be. After that, I picked up Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I generally like her work, and this is no exception. This was a fun kind of noir read about a missing girl, two people who get caught up in the case, and how that case impacts their life outside of the obvious. They're both kind of loners who are drawn into thinking about their lives and the paths that their futures should take through the process of dealing with this missing person. And I don't want to say more because this is really one of those books where you should enjoy the ride, but it has so much good flavor of its time and its place. And also I now really want to read romance comics written in Spanish because those sounded great. You'll know what I mean when you pick it up. Next, I read Matrix by Lauren Groff. This is the story of a medieval nun who, against her will, is sent to an abbey to be its prioress and to kind of clean up its affairs. It's a complete wreck when she gets there. And over the course of her life and a career, she turns it into kind of a feminist utopia, but she also pushes social and religious boundaries in ways that are a bit shocking, even to the people who live with her and trust her leadership. I actually have a separate review about this book that I'll link below, but it was a really interesting one. And I'll be thinking about it for a while. If you're looking for some historical fiction that has modern concerns in it and, a lot of weird kicks in terms of social and cultural interpretation, this would definitely be a good read. Next, I read the first of two Ann Patchett works that I read this month. I read Commonwealth. And you know what? I really liked Commonwealth. I think a lot of people really like some Ann Patchett works and not others. Commonwealth did it for me. It's basically about a blended family with a lot of dysfunctional siblings who all develop these loving attachments to each other despite the fact that they have neglectful parents and a lot of tragedy and challenges in the past and throughout their lives. But part of the heart of the book is that one of the girls in the family grows up and she meets and has a long-standing affair with a famous author who makes a novel out of their family, and then they respond to seeing themselves in a fictional work. I think this probably has a lot of ties actually to Patchett's life and sort of the writing theft that many authors are accused of. But it's actually just a really interesting book. It's one of those ones that doesn't necessarily have a plot line in the traditional sense, but if you like character-driven stuff But if you like character-driven writing and looking at relationships between characters, then I think you'll really enjoy this. That's what I really got out of it. As kind of a breather between Ann Patchett books, I then ended up reading Spitting Silver by Naomi Novik, and I expected to like it because I enjoyed Uprooted, and I was correct. I really enjoyed Spitting Silver. I thought it was a fun take on Rumpelstiltskin. It really took that story and turned it into something super original and interesting. So you can see the inspiration for it, but I actually liked the book a lot better than I was thinking I would when I was told that it was based on Rumpelstiltskin. So if you're looking for an interesting fantasy work that draws on folklore, has a really nice folkloric feel, but is also very modern and has interesting female characters, then Spinning Silver might be a good read for you. Then after that, I read was probably my biggest disappointment of the month, which is Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. I remember seeing this in the store when I was younger and wondering if I should buy it because it got a lot of press. I read a book review of this that said that somebody missed a plane flight because they were so engrossed in Bel Canto, and I had high expectations going in because I really liked Commonwealth. However, Bel Canto was pretty whatever. I enjoyed the story in the sense that Ann Patchett is a good writer and she has a way of carrying you through her work because it's engrossing and her writing is good, but I kept having to do double takes throughout this work because it's essentially about a bunch of people who have a party in essentially a third world country that is not specified, but it's clearly in South America somewhere. And some terrorists, because the president is supposed to be at this party, take it over and hold everybody in it hostage, including a really fancy opera singer, some businessmen from all over the world, etc. And in the book, it's very much about how this opera singer is so enchanting that they're all obsessed with her, and all the men are kind of in love with her, and classical music is hypnotic even for these beastly terrorists, and I did not really like it. Especially because upon further reading, I found out that it was actually about a real hostage situation in Peru that ended tragically and was very much about, of course, the political issues that you would think a hostage situation's about. So reading about terrorists and their captives gallivanting around a property and kind of enjoying life together because of the magic of opera, yeah, I wasn't feeling it. That plot line did not work for me. After that, I finally decided to crack into some Sally Rooney books because Beautiful World, Where Are You came out, and I wanted to know. So I started with Conversations with Friends because that is Sally Rooney's first novel. It is about a young woman who wants to think of herself as an artist and as somebody important, but she's a poor college student. She has a best friend that she's kind of in love with still, and also the best friend is more charming than her, at least from her perspective. And she and her friend perform spoken word poetry together. And then they end up meeting this older couple. The woman is a photographer. The man is an actor. And they become sort of enchanted by these people's wealthier, more developed lives and really kind of get involved in their social circles to the point where the main character has an affair with the husband. And so it's about a younger woman having an affair with an older man who is married. And this book is really interesting. I actually want to do a fuller video on Sally Rooney's novels, so I won't go too far into it here. But I really like this book because it is just riveting. And also I think it really captures a lot of the insecurities and internal thoughts of a young woman who wants to be seen as beautiful and important, and an older man who isn't necessarily the most mature, but gets really caught up in making her feel that way. So none of the people in this book are good or particularly sympathetic, in my opinion, but they're fascinating. And on that note, you should read it. My second to last book of the month was so cute. It was my book of the month pick. I'm so glad I picked it. It was The Sweetest Remedy by Jane Igharo. This is about a woman who's half Nigerian. She's only met her father once, and she really essentially feels abandoned by him. He paid child support to her mother in the United States, but he basically went back to his home country, got a family there, and has ignored her for most of her life. Now she's an adult and she gets notice that he has died, and he wants her to come to his funeral, and he wants her to meet her family that she never got to meet because he never included her. And so she goes over there. You know, she obviously shocks and upsets her relatives who thought that they were their father's only family. And in the meantime, she meets a super hot family friend who is a great romantic lead. I'm not going to say any more, but I loved this book. It was such a fun read. The male lead was very sexy, and I would definitely watch this movie, and I kind of hope they make it into a movie so I can enjoy the story again without a reread. And then after that, I read the second of Sally Rooney's novels, and that would be Normal People. It is about two people who kind of develop a weird sexual relationship in high school. They continue to know each other throughout their lives, and they get together, fall apart, develop together over the years in a dysfunctional, but also sort of charming, I guess, way. In a fairly dysfunctional way, but it really seems to me at this point that Sally Rooney's characters are generally very dysfunctional, bad at relationships, and bad at just saying what they want. So if you want to read about emotionally stunted people who really like each other and have chemistry but manage to screw it up repeatedly, then Normal People is the book for you. And those are all of the books that I read in September. I didn't read anything that I think is going to change my life as a book, but overall most of the books I read were really fun, good reads. I feel really satisfied with that, and hopefully, even though this is late, this video gave you some thoughts for what to read next too. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and happy reading.